Alright. Operator's manual steam turbine electric freight locomotive with dynamic brakes Norfolk Western Rail Company Baldwin Lima Hampton Corporation Babcock Wilcox Company Westinghouse Electric Corporation. Operator's manual N number STE1 4500 steam turbine electric freight locomotive with dynamic braking Norfolk Railroad number 2300 Baldwin Lima Hamilton Corporation Philadelphia 42 PA September 1953. This manual contains instructions for the operating crew to handle the steam turbine electric with the necessary accessory element in the described general data page. Shop men will find the maintenance information shop procedure separate for the separate in a separate book. However, both of the group of employees should be familiar with the overlapping work, such as the preliminary preparations on the making ready track, elementary inspection, adjustment to the emergency operation indicated for the trouble, the various operating instructions which follow. General description are separated but functionally arranged to enable the crew to study a particular problem with the last conflict with their other subjects. Description of the troubleshooting, adjusting, cutting out the faulty equipment are given in the guide with the qualified employees in emergency. It is quite likely that some procedures should be limited to the supervisor operating men because of the general precaution to cover the changes to equipment after the locomotive is placed in service. Therefore, operating rules issued by the railroad imposing more rigid limitations take precedence over the recommendations in this book. Alright, General 1, description, introduction, arrangement of the equipment. Number 2, boiler, introducing protective devices. Turbine and gear and introduction protective devices. Electrical system, power system, auxiliary equipment, electrical equipment cabinet, dynamic braking, air system control, boiler, manual control, hand, remote control, automatic control, ash discharge, grate operation, fade water, hot heater controls, protective devices, locomotive cab, turbine. Operation starting procedure cooler colder boiler lay fuel bed bracing steam automatic control 2 bank boiler 3 starting with the bank boiler 4 routine boiler operation 5 emergency boiler operation 6 preliminary locomotive operation 7 to move the locomotive to 8 sanding to 9 stopping locomotive 10 reverse the locomotive 11 electrical load limits 12, applying the dynamic brakes. 13, to cut out with the traction motor and main generator. 14, to tow the locomotive. 15, to shut down the locomotive. 16, alarm protected devices. 17, miscellaneous list of illustration figures. View of the locomotive main turbine generator closed. View of the main turbine boiler control cabinet and cabin interior rear boiler wall. Selector valve and simplified boiler control diagram. Engine control stand left side open. Traction motor control cabinet. 11 generator control cabinet. Table A shows the use of throttle and reverser levers. 75 figure 12 arrangement of equipment. Table B valve checklist cold start. C valve checklist normal operation. General description introduction. All right, we'll keep reading. Alright, introduction. The steam turbine electrical locomotive described in this book uses the coal for fuel and is electrical motor for the traction to obtain the desired characteristic electric power and driving wheels. Current with the turbine driven the generator transmitted through the various switching control devices for the traction motor with the fundamental control of the throttle, reverser, brake valve that has many similar features on all type of locomotive experience where the crews can soon adapt themselves to new equipment by centering their attention around these controls. However, the improved design required additional auxiliary equipment, safety devices which operate in a different manner for each of the locomotive with the control for the oil and steam, water, air braking, electrical system required for the careful study to obtain the most effective, reliable services for this manual. Arrangement of equipment. The upper portion of the locomotive above the underframe is divided into the number of sections as shown for the illustration figure 12 in the rear of this book. Nearly all the operation control of the locomotive are in the operator's cab, but the crew should be familiar with all the compartments of this principal equipment. Each of the compartments is filed. The front electrical section share ahead of the coal bunker contains the miscellaneous equipment. Noise section behind the front of the dynamic brake assembly. Front of the electrical equipment compartment. The nose section of the forward end of it extends about 2 feet inside of the front of the door contains the air intake filters and headlight running light fixtures. The front dynamic brake assembly is out of the roof of the section above the side trusses with the extent of the 9 feet behind the nose section. The assembly consists of the dissipating resistor for the electrical braking circuit for the first 6 traction motor-driven fan for cooling the resistors. The front electrical equipment compartment properly shown in the dynamic brake contains the front motor control cabinet and a motor-driven traction motor blower, a fire extinguisher, dynamic brake cam switch, and a photographic of the equipment in the control compartment is included with the illustration in this book. The cab book current extend for approximately 17 feet behind the front of the dynamic braking compartment. Speech of the beneath the sloping of the bottom of the coal with the burn used to house the air compressor, the air reserve, the stoker engine batteries, and sandboxes. The operator's cab occupies an 8-foot space with the rear of the cool bunker with the tool 1/2 of the foot passage between the cab and the coal of the bunker. It contains the toilet, sandboxes, fire extinguisher, removable panels, and provided with the access to the front side of the control stand and the fireman's console. A detailed description of the cab is given later. A boiler section takes up the entire section and intersection with the locomotive of the power plant. Compartment in the rear of the boiler contains the main turbine, the reduction gear for the two main generators, alternator on a single shaft, in addition with the housing of the boiler feed with equipment, the steam piping, the sandboxes, boiler, blower, and etc. Partition separates the generator from the turbine feed equipment so that only the filter air is immediately emitted to the generator. A blower box serves to further isolate the air intake with the blower. The rear electrical section extends from the rear of the generator to the back of the locomotive. The real extension of the power of the compartment contains the great rear dynamic brake assembly, rear electrical equipment compartment. The rear dynamic brake assembly is in the roof section above the side truck, similar to the front dynamic braking function with the last 6 traction motor. The rear electrical equipment compartment is under dynamic braking, contains the rear of the control cabinet, the generator control cabinet, a traction motor blower, and a dynamic braking cam switch. The principal external items of interest for the operators, in addition to the usual brake pipe and end connectors, are battery charging receptacle left side head of the cab beneath the underframe adjacent to the battery, standing by light receptacle at the rear of the locomotive outside the left of the rear sheet. A train line receptacle for the electrical jumper between the locomotive and tender, containing the wire for the rear of the headlight and pressure switch for the water softener on the tender. Electrical receptor softener and backwash pump left side of the tender. Sand fill boxes, one above each box. T-hole with the rear of the grate with the right side of the roundhouse. Air connection with the boiler control left side under the frame over the rear of the second trunk. Boiler control air reserve and turbine control air reserve cock under the cab floor through the doors outside of the right. Boiler control air master valve, the roundhouse steam connection type of the forward auxiliary left of the side below the two side jets and auxiliary oil pump, the right side middle of the third truck, the coal pump left side rear K roundhouse water connection for the fill of the boiler left side of the rear turbine, lube oil drain cutout for the left side middle of the third truck, emergency feed pump tank valve the right side of the tender, coal pump tank valve left side of the tender, water softener inlet valve left side left side tender outlet valve right side water softener hydromatic valve behind the door right side of the front shield, stoker steam stop valve behind the door middle of the coal bunker right side. All right, boiler boiler general introduction. The boiler is a special nature circulation water tube with a long longitudinal drum with a low head with the locomotive cyclone steam separator tube with the boil of the drum that provide with the dry steam with the superheater sold water with the generator tube. The generator tubes extend between the top of the drum connected with the closed circle with the bottom header for the large pipes. Generator tubes from the boiler walls and arch are also arranged in the gas path of the conventional surface. The steam gassing is attached to the wall of the tubes, forming a gas-tight enclosure with external supply system tubes. Connect the boiler drum with the low header to deliver the steam-free water from the cyclone. Separated submerged with the type of the feed that is used to deliver the feed water to the drum. The drum is not exposed, but the furnace gases type 3-inch and 2.5-inch and 1-inch outside diameter are used to forth from the various boiler components. Superheater, economized air heater, incorporated with the maximum efficiency. Coal is delivered into the furnace by a modified type BR locomotive type stoker. Grate is a traveling type with a permitting continuous discharge of the ash and firing into the grate with a great speed with approximately 10 miles per hour. As discharge is spread with the ash pan, intermediately blowing steam jets automatically times combustion air supplied with the under the pressure turbine driven propeller type blower. The gas air heater is used to preheat the air, and cooler exists with a gas of 350 degrees Fahrenheit at a full load. All auxiliary stack jets are available for supplying induced with the airflow with the firing up the low load operating when desired. Water pumped is from the tender by the coal pump through the zeolite type softener and turbine. Oil cooler in contact with the type of this de-aerating feed with the water heater. The booster pump delivers the de-aerated hot water to the main feed pump, which delivers the water through the boiler economizer to the boiler drum. Steam with the auxiliaries is taken from the boiler drum. Superheater for the suit the condition for the individual machines. All steam used for the forward in the boiler is reduced to 250 pounds pressure in order to pertain to utilization of the standing air coal Standard cold handling and air compressing equipment. The boiler and main feed for the pumps of boilers are two. And turbine driven exhaust for the de-aerating feed. But the water heater continuous blowdown for the boiler. But this flash for the steam is generated with the return of the feed water heater and is which with 12 to 15% condensated is required. The emergency operation standby feed button pump is mounted on the rear span bolster. The pump delivers the cold water directly to the tender to the boiler. Boiler and auxiliaries are automatically controlled by the pneumatic type of the controls. The air supply with the boilers control the filter and then two-stage reduce the 30 to get psi gallons and remote hand operated with the boiler control the permissible if the operating of the crew so desire. All value of the boiler control necessary for the operation of the road is located at the engineman and fireman station. Additional with the hand valve, the firing up the locomotive located on the boiler in front. Automatic control preventing protective devices. Automatic control with the boiler is achieved with the use of the four instruments called for the controllers mounted with the boiler front. These measure steam pressure, steam flow, drum water level, and airflow. The producer of the control air pressure proportional to the amount measured. These control pressures pass from one of three selectors: feed water, one engine control stand, boiler water, boiler blower on fireman's console, and stroker on the fireman's console. There is a transfer switch with the selector of the valve, which can be turned to either hand or automatic as desired. Several combinations. The settings may be used and described in pages 27 and 29. A hand position of the controllers operated to respond like conventional controllers. Automatic controllers select the control air pressure through the selector valve. The other operated diaphragm valve to hold the present condition, the steam pressure, water level, and air flow of the cool feed. When transfer switch is automatic, pneumatic interlocks will actually stop the cold feed and low water valve will indicate with the drum level the controller for the airflow through the boiler stops. If the transfer switch is left on the automatic cold feed would not start again unless the condition corrects itself with the reset procedure followed. Switching the transfer switch with the handle above the interlocks can be cut out with the crew can be proceed with the interlocking protection setting with the necessary control pressure on the top of the selector valve, maintaining pressure in the water level. The direct operated whistle located on the engineman's water column sounds of alarm on the high water level. See page 31. Additional pneumatic interlocking will shut the feed pumps down, and if the high water level occurs, the pumps will automatically start again when the level drops below the center of the glass. Having the feed water selector valve on hand does not cut out this interlock. It can be bypassed only by holding the emergency button. Turbine and gear general. Turbine generator equipment is seen for the turbine as shown for the figures 2 and 3 with the consist of the two main generators 18, 19, auxiliary generator 17, main exciter 16, and alternator 20, and driven with the steam engine steam turbine 1 with the 8.9 to 1 ratio reduction gear 21. Steam driven propeller type blowers 14 supplied with a combination of the air under the pressure of the boiler is normally under the automatic control of the response of the boiler's steam rate. Auxiliary integrally mounted on the unit. The main lubrication pump with the 7th supply of lube oil with the turbine gear with the blower that is driven by the main gear shaft with the turbine governing system consists of the speed sensitive governor 11, speed changer and load limiter 12. The servo meter 6 for the entire system of the hydraulic oil is used sucked up under the pressure main oil pump with the failure to any of the component with the loss of the oil pressure while idling or stopping the turbine depending on the nature of the failure. Remotely controlled by the air pressure for the master control of the governing system will regulate the turbine speed in accordance with the throttle position by the position of the group of the valves in the turbine system. Steam chest with the controlling the rate of the steam flow from the turbine speed. Protective device. The protective device include the hydraulic operated with the turbine stop valve 2 and the overspeed trip 3, the main trip valve 5, and the low oil pressure alarm 26, high oil temperature 27, auxiliary oil pump 24, blower protection valve, and a magnetic and a emergency trip solenoid valve with a slip magnetic valve. Alright, this shows your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 main turbine generator. And main turbine and generators. Alright, your close view of the main turbine. Alright, 1's your turbine, 2's your turbine stop valve, 3 your turbine overspeed trip mechanism, 4 stop valve with the reset mechanism, flexible shaft and the hand wheel in the cab, the manual trip valve, 5, 6 manual turbine stop valve, servo motor, 7 main oil pumps, 8 high oil pressure relief valve, 9 oil filter, 10 oil strainer, 11 governor, 12 speed charger load limit control, 13 auxiliary oil pump regulator, 14 blowers, 15 blower turbine, 16 double exciter, 17 exciter and auxiliary generator, 18 number 1 main generator, number 2 main generator, 19, 20 TM blower alternator, 21 gear case oil reserve, 22 oil filling hole cap, 23 oil level sight glass, 24 auxiliary oil pump, 25 train turbine trip alarm contactor, 26 low oil pressure alarm contactor, 27 high oil temperature alarm contactor. Legend of figures 2 and 3. The turbine stop valve with the main cutoff with the valve with the steam supply line with the turbine normally open and closed made by means of a hand wheel located in the operating cab connected with the stop valve with the flexible shaft that can be opened without the established oil with the pressure. Upon loss of the oil pressure due to the operation either with the overspeed trip of the manual trip valve that will stop and close with stopping the flow of the steam to the turbine. This two stop does not self-resetting the trip that flows. This trip when tripped but closed by either the overspeed or manual trip that must be having the hand wheel cranks to close the position before the valve can be reopened. The overspeed trip clove the foregoing trip the turbine stop valve by the dumping oil pressure starting off the main steam supply. If the turbine becomes successful, the turbine trip with the indicator light with the cap warms to boot that the brew within the device has been tripped. C, the operation number 16, or D, the trip will automatically reset the turbine speed has dropped with the safe valve with the flowing, which with the turbine stop valve manually reset. The manual trip valve also closes the stop valve with the dumping oil pressure with the operated with the pushing of the manual trip and then the cab. The lever must be pulled to reset the position before the stop valve can be reopened. The low oil pressure alarm switch operates the indicator light with the cab. If the oil pressure is in the turbines dangerously low, but the turbine must be stopped. See operation number 16F. High oil temperature alarm switch operation. The turbine oil high indicator light in the cab. The oil temperature is too high, 175 degrees or more. Crew should immediately check the equipment is described in operation 16E. The auxiliary oil pump is driven by the small integral steam turbine provided with the oil pressure control of the lubricating oil system. When the main generator-driven pump is inoperative, the control means the steam regulator to maintain the minimum oil pressure. When the main oil pump is out with sufficient to supply the oil with the minimum pressure at idling speed above the regulator valve stops auxiliary pump. The blower protection valve is incorporated with the blower steam supply line inset with preventing operating with the blower when the bearing of the oil pressure is too low. The oil from the blower bearings is supplied with the main unit. The blower will not be operated with air if there are no bearing oil pressure. Emergency trip solenoid. The valve must always be energized in order to operate with the locomotive. The automatically code with the de-energized shut off the steam and by preventing with the application of the control oil pressure. The servo motor relay is connected to the master control with the power knockout switch with the governor generator overload rate of rise relays. Hence, the turbine with the dual pressure with 1 shutting down the turbine with the throttle is in the opposition, 2 shutting down the turbine emergency with the power knockout switch opens a raise of rise for relay trip for the valve of the turbine room near the turbine stop the valve with inside of the line between the speed chamber load limiter housing and the servo meter. The slip magnet is in three-way valve located with the throttle air in the air line between the master control speed changer and the load limiter housing. And purpose is to stop the locomotive wheel slip, the reducing generator output through the reduction of steam flow with the turbine. When wheel slip, clear of the slip horn signals engine man to reduce the power. If after the short delay with the engine man failed to reduce the power sufficiently, the wheel slip relay connected to the valve and energizes it, thereby reducing the flow of the steam to turbine. It was action for the airline. When stop of the relay automatically resets the de-energize of the valve, restoring the throttle air pressure to normal. Electrical system general power system. 2 main generators locomotive are the mounted with a single shaft of the main steam power turbine. The gear with the gear which drive them. They are self-ventilated, provided with a direct current with the power to operate the traction motor. The power varies with the throttle setting in is controlled by the engine in the cab. The traction motor is mounted on or geared directly to each of the driving axle. All 6 wheels of each of the drivers. The 3 motors on each of the are permanently connected with the series, which are either are there's 2 groups of the motors, but the 2 front trucks, the end with the parallel with the either with the connected with the number 1 generator. The motors, the 2 rear truck with the connected with the line, manual with the number 2 generator, the reverse direction of the rotation. Hence, the locomotive travel is obtained the reverse of the field connection to the master control reversing mechanism. Auxiliary equipment. The blower alternator mounted with the generator shaft with alternating current which supply the 3-phase valve with the drive with the traction motor blow to receive the field excitation. An auxiliary generator circuit that has the heavy current through the traction motor will generate the heat and damage if they are not adequately cooled by these blowers. The blowers are connected with the alternator through the independent 3-phase circuit protected with the circuit breaker with each of the blower mounted, but is in a common vertical shaft. Number 1 blower cools the traction motor at the front end. The number 2 blower cools the motors on the rear end. The blower operation is automatically with the crew. Should be sure that they are operating with it. It's important to understand that the circuit breakers indicating lights in the blower circuit is also as described later. A direct current auxiliary generator mounted with the alternator frame with the belt driven through the shaft of the alternator supply the power to the charge of the battery. Operate with a DC circuit with the lighting system voltage relay or keep the circuits at 75 volts constant throughout the entire operating range of the main generator. An exciter belt driven with the main generator alternator with the alternator frame exciter circuit that's connected with the throttle connection system with the main generator field strength automatically varied according to the power requirements. Alright, electroneumatic. The equipment is equipped with a control circuit with a supply with the auxiliary generator. Both types are operated with electrical coil. With the control circuit with the first type of the operation is called directly magnetic action with the coil, while the second type is operated pneumatically with the magnetic action with the coil on the valve of the airline with the pneumatic control piping system with the supply of the air to the magnetic valves from the main compressor with the proper reducing valve with heavy-duty equipment and proper switches, cam switches, reverse electroneumatic operated. Your electrical equipment cabinets. Electrical equipment cabinets contain most of the electrical control equipment for the locomotive from the front control magnet, front motor control cabinet is reached through the door of the nose of the locomotive, the rear of the motor for the control of the cabinet, general control cabinet with the reach for the rear of the door with the power of the pilot with the compartments. Photograph of these cabinets identify the various types of equipment. The crew should be familiar with the manually operated equipment in this cabinet, such as the generator cutoff switch with the various circuit breakers, are described later with the other circuit controls. Alright, safety note. Power circuits operate with a high voltage, both power equipment control equipment and stuff with the equipment cabinets are only qualified should be attempts to answer for the cabinets adjust for the equipment. Dynamic braking. In addition to the understanding of the air brake equipment, the locomotive is equipped with the dynamic braking, the engine involved with the retarding the train with the dissipated with the heat of the electrical resistors instead of the brake shoes. Usually the particular on long grades reduce wear of the brake shoes that prevents the excessive heating of the wheels, which occur with a similar action with the air brakes. The dynamic braking with the traction motors acts as generator driven with the train with the power of the generators fed with the air cooled resistors, which are connected with the during the brake only. Motor driven fans are paired with the resistor operated with the air speed with automatically with the verify the amount with the power dissipated. Dynamic braking is controlled by the throttle with the reverse level and independent with the air brakes. Both system and thus will be avoided at the same time. Retarded the train to avoid sliding of the locomotive wheels and brakes are interlocked to prevent the application of the air brakes of the locomotive during the dynamic brake. The dynamic braking bunches the train. Slackage should always be adjusted gradually. Traction motor currently different with the grade of the during the brake of these during the motion with the A brake of the switch of the electroneumatic operated with the reverse lever to stop the desired circuit if the traction motor field with the disconnect with the armature during the brake receives excitation current from the number one main generator. The armature is connected with the dissipating resistors to absorb the power generated with the push of the train with the throttle of the varies with the field strength with the control of the braking after the turbine speeds in the range that give the adequate cooling of the motors. Miscellaneous, the storage battery. On the left side of the forward operating cab beneath the coal bunker is connected with the control circle that normally charged with the auxiliary generator, but is provided with the connections to outside the charging receptacle connecting the two shop with the terminal charging equipment. The two-pole circuit breaker in the operating cab that provided with the disconnect with the battery and all circuits except for the operating cab lights on the ground indicator light for the main power circuit with the breaker should be open whenever the locomotive is shut down to prevent the discharge of the battery. Light received the their power from the battery of the auxiliary generator in the terminal's head life, the classification light, the number lights, the compartment lights may be connected with a 110 or 60 cycle outside circuit with the transformed light relay with when the transfer lights to the desired source of the power prevents any connection between the battery and transformer. Indicator lights of many master panel lever that never receive power from the outside source of the operator cab lights and fed directly from the battery. These circuits are protected with the circuit by circuit breakers. Compressed air systems. The steam driven from the air compressor maintained with its pressure with 120 to 140 pounds with the main reserve of the outside source of the air is required from the boiler of the control system until the sufficient boiler system is available to run with the compressor with the D1 page 14 connection with the beneath the steam frame over the rear end of the second stroke. The steam is supplied to the compressor with a 250 psi and NS16 governor loads unload with the compressor as the main reserve pressure fluctuates. The shut-off of the valve with the install with the steam line to each with the compressor. The valves are open at G10 with the page 49 with the starting of the cold R normally left open except for the compressor is to be shut down. The compressor and the reserves are located beneath the cold bank with the air brake of the throttle control system are supplied with the main reserve pressure and instruction type 24RL brake air brake compressor equipment that are given in the detailed book and prepared with the brake manufacturer. The 70-pound pneumatic control lines are fed with the fed by from a high pressure line with reducing the valve with the reserve for the dynamic brake with the cam switches, power switches, the traction motor field, shunting switches are supplied in these lines. A compressor cabinet is mounted with the control stand in the cab, and another is located at the rear of the electrical cabinet directly to the right of the rear door. The separated control of the reserve of the boiler pressure limited with the main reserve pressure for the afterlead with the control reserve of the air. The filter reduced to 230 psi for use in the boiler control. The tender brakes that's normally actuated through the brake cylinder train line from the locomotive unit. However, it says indicate the locomotive the air tender brake of the part the automatic equipment on the tender apply the tender brake for the app equipment of the function any type of emergency application. The crew should be familiar with the location of the function of the most frequently used valve for the Cox and Airlines boiler control valve. They appear through the boiler instruction. Other important valves are listed below. Control system shut-off cockpit is main with the air supply with the control of the air reserve located with the engine position and accessible with the door with the right side of the sheet with the must be permit the electro-pneumatic equipment, the boiler control equipment to function. The drain cock with the control reserve must be closed with the control emergency cutout cock with the above the independent brake valve bell ringer and the standard valve that are below the brake valve handles. The brake system emergency brake valve is provided with the front head bulkhead with the left side of the cabin and the brakeman's cupola on the water tender. Alright, so controls, boiler, general, console type of the boiler control cabinet, figure 4 is located in the left front of the portion of the operating cabinet on the boiler control equipment is located on the boiler front with which of the rear of the wall of the operating cabinet is shown figure 5. The boiler controls are may be classified into 3 groups for the operating purpose of the manual. The operator opens and closes the valve with its hand and remote. The operator opens and closes the valve by varying the control air pressure with the diaphragm operated with the cock of the push button or a selector valve. The HN hand position is used to vary the air pressure, and automatic is with the selector valve, the automatic position for the forward controller of the boiler front with the position set with the valves to maintain the preset standards of the control circuit. Standard control. Your manual control. The manually operated valve of the convention with all the gate and globe valves. Each of the valves is suitably identified with the tag convenient for the handle with the manually operated with the valves are colored in red, yellow, green, and which indicate the proper position for the valve when the locomotive is interpreted as valves. Red valves should be closed, and yellow valve is normally partially open or being closed, being used to control. Green valve should be wide open. Manually operated valves will not be discussed further in this section, but will be individually named and located in the operating section. Alright, your boiler control cabinet shows the vertical steam pressure gauge, steam pressure AG 145, water pressure level the AG 146, water level AG 147, steam flow AG 148, vertical stirrup gauge, the auxiliary steam pressure AG 149. Water pressure heater 1 AG 1050, heat pressure black 10 AG 1051, heat level of discharge red AG 1051, selector valve feed water, selector valve blower, selector valve stoker, emergency blowdown AB 1020, stack jackets AV 1019, cold pump control AV 1016, lights AE 1017. S jets AV 1018, main pumps control AV 1015. Stroker shut off AV 1014, low water reset AB 1030, emergency pump emergency control AB 1101, emergency pump starter, and then it shows your front of the boiler and rear cover removed. So this is your boiler front. Should be on the rear cab wall. Alright, legend from the front of the boiler, steam jet control, S205, S206 master stroke jet, S214 master cab, same 245 master stroke jet, S248 slicer jet, same S613 extremely steam jet, S629 bypass auxiliary steam reducing, S661 gauge glass shut off top, S662 gauge glass shut off bottom, S664 superheater pressure shut off, S665 meter shut off line AC 1001, S666 meter shut off low AC 1001, S667 meter shut off high AC 1001, A669 meter shut off high AC 1004, S670 meter shut off low AC 1004, S673 gauge shut off valve top, S674 gauge shut off bottom, S678 water column blowdown, S679 gauge glass blowdown, S680 left gauge gas blowdown, S683 boiler drum vent, AC 1001 water level control, AC 1002 superheater pressure control, AC 1003 air fuel ratio controller, AC 1004 superheater flow control, AC AV 1074 greater drive control cock, A the boiler front gauge panel, B the tender tank level gauge, C the bell. All right, hand and remote control, manual control. Some of the diaphragms use the diaphragm valve to serve as only this wide open and closed valve, usually called an on-off type. These valves are operated only for the convenience of the airline. Substitutes for the extension handle of the lever. The operator controls each of these valves by an air cock or pushes the button located in this valve. The steam valve on the cold pump turbines, fireman console cock normally open. Steam valve with the permanency pumping turbine engine station normally off. Steam valve main turbine pump fireman console cock normally open. Steam stack jets fireman console cock normally off. Emergency pump turbine starter emergency starting push button used only when starting the pump. Rail washers emergency station cutoff normally off. The diaphragm operated with the control valve, which and are used to automatic control the boiler. Steam rated with our operated through the selector valve, which is indicated with the service that they perform. Referring to Figure 6, each of the selector valve has two knobs to the transfer, which is the one selector of the hand, and automatic control with the control valve. The two, the setting with the desired control air pressure on the hand. The two vertical strips of the gauge of the mount with the face for each of the selector valve to show the pressure of this black pointer A on the left side, indicating the air load with the pressure out from the left from the count. From the control, the red pointer C with the right of the center indicates the control air pressure available from the transfer purpose. The black pointer D at the extreme right indicates the control air pressure being sent back to the diaphragm, sent to the diaphragm valve. The valves are operated with the selector valve transferred to the hand. To automatic is made by adjusting the air control valve until the pointer D matches the pointer C. This transfer switches to automatic. Are your selector valve figure 6, the transfer switch hand and to auto. Two pressure control valves, A loading pressure indicator, C the control transfer pressure indicator, and D the diaphragm pressure indicator. Transferring the automatic to hand is made by the turning of the control valve of the knob until the pointer of C matches with the pointer of D. The turn transfer the switch for the hand, adjusting the control of the valve to give the desired air pressure to the valve. When switching from the hand to automatic, operating with the control knob varies the pressure shown and by D. Then switching of the automatic to hand with operating with the control knob with the change of the pointer C. The transfers are made only in control of the function as normally. For example, the transfer of the feed water from the hand to automatic is made with water at the center of the glass, and transferring the blower and stroker from the hand to automatic. The blower is normally transferred first, but the transfer is being made from the steam pressure at the set point on the pressure controller. All air operated valves are set to start opening at 5 psi gallons to control air pressure and are wide open at 25 psi gallons values. Valves are operated through the selector valves are your simplified boiler control diaphragm. Your rail washer push button engine emergency FN fuel pump. Engineers, AAS, Cox, main pump, feed water selector valve, which lever control goes down into the forward relay, and the main fuel forward pump, the steam flow control, forward relay, forward feed water selector valve to the forward regulator valve. From the steam control flow that goes down to the continuous blower. You have a cold pump with the cocks and stack jets with the cock and boiler from the boiler blower controller, from the boiler blower relay, and then the boiler selector valve to the boiler blower. Your pressure control switch to the stock selector valve, and then it goes through the boiler blower relay blower section valve, the relay blower stroke selector valve with the cock and to the stroker. Feed water regulating valve with the selector valve with the engine man stand with the steam stroker engine valve with the selector valve with the fireman console blower operated with the selector valve on the fireman's console. With all the manual and hand remotes manual, the valve is normally positioned with the engine control can fire with the boiler using only these selector valves to maintain the desired quantity of the water, coal, and air to hold the steam, the pressure, water level to the desired point. But the boiler selector valve is left on the automatic while the stroker selector valve is on hand. While the air will flow, the increase the degrees of the operation of the stroker selector valve will only permit the load changing by hand. With the operation to the open one of the two selector valves, the boiler is automatically fired with the switching of the all three selector valves to the automatic. The controllers of the boiler from these transmit the controller air impulse through the selector valve to position the control valve in order to maintain the preset conditions. Automatic control. Alright, the following discussion is automatic with the boiler control. They will be referred to the simplified boiler control diagram, figure 7 in the boiler front photograph, figure 8. Controls the operated engine man, as also indicated with the other boiler controls are convenient with the fireman. All cock handles point up for the normal operation. 4 controllers mounted on the boiler fronts are used to achieve the automatic control. Pressure controller measures the superheated outlet, the steam pressure main for the Borden tube gauge. Position all the air pilot valve to produce the control air pressure portion of the steam pressure AC 102. 1002. Steam flow control measure for the flow of the steam through the superheater mean for the different bellow of the position air pilot valve to reduce the control air pressure proportion steam valve AC 1004. Level control is to maintain the water level of this control at the center of the glass is measure the drum water level to maintain the different bellow of the position air pilot valve to reduce the control air pressure proportional drum level AC 1001. Your boiler blower control measures the flow of the air through the boiler mean with the differential diaphragm balanced against the air with the pressure of the steam flow control with the resultant of the two pressure of the position of the air pilot valve to produce the control air pressure proportional to the coil of the fire rating of the AC 1003. The heart of each of these control of the air pilot valve is called the pilotrol. Pilotrol is like the like all boilers control with the supply of the filter with the air at 30 psi gauge for the valve 7 to connect with the measuring element. It will vary the output air pressure to 5 to 25 psi when the movements of the measuring device. This controls the air pressure is then transmitted one or more instruments before operating with the control valve. There's nothing on the steam flow for the drum level. The controller of the adjusted while the operating of either the controls does not function properly with the switch and the feed water selector valve to the hand. Continue the drum. The blower selector with the valve does not function properly. Switch it to the hand. Otherwise, leave it to automatic. As these stroker controllers is not connected with the feed of the water system, the stroker selector valve may be left in automatic even with the trouble that may be experienced with the feed water control. The control air pressure from the steam flow with the drum level. The controllers are fed to the relay of figure 7 the KB 1158 located inside of the fireman counts with the relay average of the two pressure delivery of the resultant pressure of the feed water selector valve and the feed water regulator valve with the boiler water level may be vary as much as 5 inches on the glass with the idling to full load being low at low and load and high load. The control air pressure from the steam of the pressure controller is transmitted directly to the stroker selector valve then to the stroker to the engine steam valve. The controller has a red pointer on the pressure gauge, but the pilot valve will decrease the control air pressure of the stroker engine with the valve to hold the black pointer on the red and standard pointer, while under the wave of the red pointer that normally carried at 590 600 psi. The black hand will lag slightly below the red hand at the higher loads. Excessive safety of the valve popping occurs with the load dropping. Reduce the standard pointer. The setting of the standard pointer has been reduced the blower to 755 psi, 575 psi. While road reported to the maintenance to adjust the standard pointer, open the control door and then turn the knob to the desired direction. Make the standard adjustment slowly, never more than 25 psi at a time when the stroker selector valve is an automatic. If the pressure control does not seem to function properly, we switch the stroker selector valve to the hand. Continue to run feed water and blower selector of the valves and must be kept in automatic for responding properly. The control air pressure for the boiler blower control with the control air pressure from the stroker selector valve are fed with the boiler blower relay located inside the fireman's console with the relay averages the two pressures. Delivered the average pressure for the boiler selector valve then sends to the boiler steam regulator the vertical index of the scale with the pointer of the blower control with the pointer with the adjust the mean of the knob in the front, lowering the pointer to a high number while the increase in the airflow. The normal setting of the pointer is marked on the scale with a pencil. At the times it may be desired to vary with the setting slightly, not more than the small division at the time in order to clear up the stack after the stack clears an original setting should be tried again. Any changes required the controller normally indicate the poor fuel bed or cold jets or great speed should be checked with the report of these conditions if not corrected by the end of the run. Or your ash discharge. Ash discharge from the traveling grate with its blown with the rear with the ash pan with the steam jet steam sequentially operated with the electro-pneumatic system. With the system consists of the mercury filled with electrical time delay device, alternately energized with the two electrical solenoid valve. Each of the solenoid valves emits and exhausts the air of the valve operating with the pistons in the duplex system valve located on the front of the ash pan. The time cycling is 10 minutes and the blowing period is 10 seconds. Each set of 3 ash jets operate with the middle off the period of other. Therefore, the 10-second blowing period occurs every 5 minutes. Alright, your grade operation. Grade is operated with the steam cylinder through the ratchet and pawl mechanism of the steam. This cylinder controlled with the pneumatically operated with the group with the pilot valve. The air control of the system consists of the pilot valve with the three-way cock with the needle valve, bleed, and diaphragm operated for the steam valve with the strike of the plate with the steam cylinder piston rod monetary contacts. Pilot air valve with the pressure with the steam valve with the diaphragm operated with the speed controls obtained with the rate of the blade with the knee valve with which preset to move with the grade at 8 feet per an hour. There three-way cock with the connected with the give the three grade speeds. Stop, normal, and fast. Fast speed is presented with the grade above 50 feet an hour late, but this should only be made in emergency during the maintenance. Feed water heater control. Just as the conventional locomotive, the feed water heater is automatically controlled, but requires no attention for the operating crew. The heater control in the locomotive air and on our air operative. Any of the trouble developing in the heater will result in a low drum water level. It will be necessary to start the emergency feed water with the pump, which pumps the water directly from the tender to the boiler. Bypasses the feed water heater, and any use of the emergency pump must be reported. The routine checks of not more than several minutes duration should be made of the emergency pump, each of the running preferably at a low load. Protective devices. In addition with the feed water heater with the control of the system, protective interlock with the warning devices are provided with the warning alarm signal system, the whistle on water column, and this below either the high or low water and below boiler falls 5 inches below the center of the glass or rises 7 inches above the center of the glass. This whistle is directly operated by the weights over in the column. Should it continue to blow after the normal level that is restored, below water column drain and intermittently several times in report. Bell on level, the controller. This will ring when the water level drops 4 inches below the center of the rises 4 inches above the center of the signal comes from the air operated control system. Water softener alarm. A red light on the right side of the engine stand beneath the air brake the gauge with the wood light within the water softener becomes sparsely plugged. This bed should be cleaned with reducing speed. Will normally put out the light reporting the condition at the end of the run. The emergency feed pump should be used sparingly if at all when the light is on. See page 464 as also. The control interlock area, the low water. The operated when the drum level the water is 6 inches below the center of the gauge glass with the shutdown, the stroke of the boiler, blow off the selector valve. They are automatic. These interlocks can also be reset after the water level that has been restored to the normal. The interlocking is reset manually. Push the reset button to restore the pressure on gauge A with the selector valve. The high water valve. They operates when the drum level rises 6 inches above the center of the gauge of glass with the shut off the steam supply of both the boiler feed pump the interlock with the automatic reset with the drum level the automatic the center of the glass the stroke of the blower controls are not affected. Cold pump and emergency pump. This interlock is provided so that these pumps cannot be operated at the same time, thereby ensuring the water flow through the power turbine oil cooler at all times. Alright, your boiler blower failure. The operated within the boiler discharge pressure falls below 1/2 inch static water pressure with the shut off the steam supply into the stroke of the interlock and is automatically reset with the blower discharge. The pressure of the restored normally. This interlock also prevents you the use of the stroker automatic when stack of the jets are in operation. Heater level and feed pump. This operates when the heated water level drops in 10 inches below the normal to shut off the steam to feed pump. If there could be the pump then work is indicated by the water treat and high water and heater pressure gauge on the environment's console. The water level will be restored in less than 30 seconds. The interlocking will be automatically reset with the cold pump to normal not working. The emergency feed pump should be started immediately. Alright, your booster pump, the feed pump. This operates when the booster pump becomes the suction bound with the cavities closed with the feed with the pump of the governor's steam valve. This usually functions as a result of an upset heater pressure and is indicated with the pump's booster pump with the discharge by the heater pressure gauge on the console registers the same pressure when the booster pump recovers. It automatically resets the interlock of the pump that does not recover in 30 seconds. Start the emergency feed pump. This interlock is non-pneumatic. It uses the booster pump the pressure directly. Greater turbulor. This interlock is automatically operated with the stroke of the control pressure of the gauge D on the selector valve. The three-way valve is in the same line with the great drive of the directs the stream steam to the great drive when the stroker control pressure is above 7 psi a gallon to the turbulators when it's less than 7 psi a gallon. Your stroker drive. This interlock is also automatically controlled by the stroker control pressure when the control pressure is above 3 psi gallons or steam the band with the jet fuel manifold at 3 psi gallons or below. The steam is shut off. Emergency blowdown. The interlocking is manually controlled with the push button on the forward control console. It is bypassed with the normal control of the continuous blowdown, but that opens the valve the wide when the should be used only in the event of the high water, which cannot be reduced by any other means. Emergency pumps. The emergency control. The center locking is manually controlled by the push button on the fire command control. The bypass the normal control with the emergency pump with the run with the pump without the regard for the drum water level as indicated by the level controller. Cold pump operation should be used only with the level controller faulty and made with the main pump is not operative. They may also be used with a quick check of the operation for the emergency pump. While these controls are provided with the convenience for the operator, it is not advantage for the desirable automatic control of the stroker jet chamber. The jet pressure should be made only cold variations occur and or best made with periods of low load when the fuel bed it can be observed clearly. Control cabinet turning with the reverser change with the cabinet with the direction motor field with the determine the direction of the rotation of the motors and the direction of the locomotive. This lever also determines whether the heavy duty braking that can switch with the R set with the motoring of the braking lever 5 positions off forward reverse dynamic braking in each direction in which it clearly marked below the level of the movement is subject with the following limitations. Mechanically interlock with the throttle so it cannot be moved except when the throttle is in the out position. Never move the reversal level while the locomotive is in motion except with the direction and dynamic braking instructions. Brake valves. For standard 2.4 RL air brake, the equipment is mounted with the brake pedal with the independent brake valve control of the locomotive with the brakes only with the automatic brake valve control with the brake of the both locomotive with the cars duplex with the pressure gauge with the show mains equalizing reservoir pressure of the brake cylinder and brake same in the brake and pipe pressure and the equipment functions in the same manner of all the type of locomotives. Instruction of the air brake manufacturer should be inside with the detailed information. Or your motor ammeter indicates the amount of the current flowing through the traction motor that connected with the motor 1, 2, and 3, but an equal current normally flow through the other motor. The reading of this meter must be kept within all allowable load limits as posted on the cab as discussed later in the operating section. Or your speedometers beneath the ammeter indicate locomotive speed. The turbine speed indicator shows the speed of the turbine RPM. The normal maximum speed of the turbine is 8,000 revolutions per minute, but the speed may be slightly higher above the 9th throttle. You have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Indicating, 1, indicating lights are marked due, the drum pressure gauge, 3, the traction motor load ammeter, 4, the locomotive speed indicator, 6, 5, the speed indicator 6 of the feed water selector valve, air brake system, duplex gauge, 7, water softener, indicator lights, 8. So we have 1 through 8 on the side, top is half here. And then 9's an emergency pump start button, 10's the rail washer, 11's the steam valve emergency pump turbine, and 12 is the battery breaker, 13 is the reverse level, 14 is the throttle, and 15 is the circuit breaker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8. Going straight down. 1's the duplex gauge of the turbine with the governor control. 2 is the battery ammeter. 3 is the battery voltmeter. 4 is the ground indicating light main power circuit number 1. Power circuit number 1. Ground indicating light main power circuit number 2. Ground indicating light control indicates exciters less 7. Ground indicating light blower 8. Alright, not for a short period of time, however, if the turbine speed exceeds 8,900 RPM, but the turbine should be shut down with the turbine manual trip of the cab, the roof directly above the engine man position, provided with the emergency image with the stopping the turbine stop valve, hand wheel inside the left of the cab, the door is the normal operation explained on page 12. The steam pressure gauge, 2, the feed water selector valve 6, emergency pump, the turbine valve 1, and starting button 9 are boiler controls described in the other portion of this book. Headlight switch on the cab, the roof adjacent with the turbine triplet that has 5 positions for the control locomotive with tender headlights. Alarm and indicator lights 1 with the engine man, irregularities operation 6 with the lights with our normal panel facing with the engine man, figure 8 with those left side with the engine man control stand with the figure 9 with the after the main power circuit breaker of the ground can indication with the visible with the fireman position with the control stand doors closed and control with the exciter and blower ground with the indication visibly only after opening the door. Instruction is necessary action by the grid or given the operation in section 16. Battery ammeter, battery voltage are behind the door on the left side of the engine man control stand figure 9. Turbo governor and control gauge behind the door on the left side of the engine control stand is duplex gauge showing the air pressure and with the airline's control color coded designation appears on the face of the gauge. Circuit breakers are protected with the electrical switch, but they automatically open the overload of the current circuit. This should be checked for the circuit that involved. They are not functioning. They are closed normally. They are closed manually, but they must be first moved in the full off position before closing. The breakers at the control stand and the operation cab are lighting circuits. Or see the nameplates as they stand. Battery breaker, the rate of the rise of the reset switch, and breakers in small room ahead of the cab. The protector of the following light circuit with the breaker, the boiler light circuiting is on the left side of the other circuits ahead with the two breaker on the right side. Console boiler, front lights, the front electrical equipment cabinet, the stroker engine space, the battery box, the locker room, and step track light. Be sure that the battery breaker is open during any of the layover of the turbine and shut down in order the miscellaneous lights will be, which may otherwise drain the battery and completely disconnect. The crew should be also familiar with the dynamic braking fan breakers in the roof and the front of the rear compartment with the breakers in the generator control cabinet. The control cabinet shown in figure 10 and 11. The control and it's manually operated to open circuit breakers and cutout switches. The other equipment in the cabinets functionally automatically observe safety note page 16. The control breaker is auxiliary generator control segment pole breaker which must be closed to energize the control of the circuit which is necessary to operate the locomotive. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, where's 6? 6, 7, 8. 1's your field shutting contractors. 2, the motor switches. 3, ground relay resistors. 4, brake protective relays. 5, field shunt relay rear cabinet over the dynamic braking wheel front relay front cabinet. 6, wheel slip relays. 7 is your reverser, and 8 is the rate of rise of the relays. 1, and then 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 7, and 6, 5, 6, 7, 8. Control breaker, the blower, alternator breaker, those 3, the blower breakers for the time delay relay. Number 5, number 1 generator cutout switch. Number 2 generator cutout switch. 6 traction motor cutout switches 1 and 2. 7 traction motor cutout switches 3 and 4. Number 8. All right, your blower breakers number 1 and 2 are the 3-polar circuit breaker that automatically open the 3-phase circuit with the respective blowers and shut the circuit with the overloaded current. But the closely manual blower cut must operate with the power to receive the breakers when even the traction motors are working. Blower alternator breaker and the 2-pole circuit breaker with the alternator field current with the circuit with the auxiliary generator. If the overload protection open must be closed manually to provide power for the blowers and stated above. The traction motor cutout switch is for each truck with a 12 4 switches connected with the steer with the coil with the main power switch with the trouble developed in the motor. It may be removed from the electrical circuit manually thrown with the corresponding cutout switch to the down closed position. The switch has 3 poles that are related to chain for the indicator light with the excitation and braking circuit that are to take care of when the switch is thrown in the down closed position. A generator cutout switch for each of the main generator total of the 2 switches cuts out the faulty generator by operating the field circuit with manually operated with a single pole switch, and all motors connected with the cutout generator are to drive with the power. A rate of rise of the relay. The tank with the shear with the traction motor for the east with the track of the predicament with the circuit again with the surge with the rapid rising current with one of the relay trips. The motor switch with the faulty circuit with the de-energized with the open with the emergency trip solenoid valve with the shuts off with the steam supply with the described on page 13. The electrical troubles are often temporarily an attempt that may be the operative and normally return the throttle to idle position, pressing the rate and rise reset button with the inner operating cab. The relays are in the motor control cabinets and should not be adjusted by anyone who is not familiar with the function of these interlocks as outlined with the maintenance testing instruction. Or your power knockout relay opens with the emergency brake application curve with the dynamic brake overcurrent relay functions with the relay opens the effective of the emergency trip solenoid valve with the same that was described in the preceding paragraph. The brake overload relay is connected with directly in the power knockout relay circuit. Emergency brake protection is obtained through pneumatically operated with the operated per knockout switch of the throttle must be returned to the idle position before the power can be reapplied through the power knockout operation. Brake pressure low per switch. Close the contact with the main reserve pressure with the drop of the value too low, the ensure the stopping of the locomotive, the energize with the brake pressure to low relay coil with the which the coil with the shore of the rate of the rise, the relay contact with the motor switch with control coil circuits. The purpose of this is to enable the engine man to plug the traction motor to the stop of the locomotive in an emergency stream and emergency. The pressure which the switch is located under the engine man position, the relay, and the motor control cabinets. Alright, cooling air relays. The cooling air relays are air pressure switch with the respond to the air pressure with the traction motor blower deducts. If the pressure is too low with the light with the blower stop, the light with the breakers should be checked as directed on page 84 of the operating section. This also changes the alternator field automatically according to the conditions, but the normal operation of the blower stop light described on page 84 is also operators need to know. Wheel slip relays. Wheel slip relays are connected with the traction motor with the determinant unbalanced voltage of the condition. When they arrive at the wheel slip, the contacts first closed below the wheel slip horn signal by the engine man to the retard of the throttle. A few notches further unbalanced voltage conditions cause unclosed additional contacts with the automatic reduce the power of the slipping magnet valve described on page 13 notes. Alright, control turbine. Alright, control turbine. The turbine operating large automatically within instruction herein for the boiler locomotive operating are followed with the governing system protective devices, including the hand operated stop valve with the manual trip while described in the beginning of the page 8. The turbine operating valve with the operating with the various position for the throttle and reverse level listed in the tray chart form the page 75. To start the turbine, open the condensating drain after the prolonged shutdown. After the oil pressure is established, item with the page 29, page 52. Item 29, page 52, with the stop of the valve means for the off of the hand wheel, the throttle and advance the throttle from the off the idle position following the warm-up period for the turbine closed condensation drains. If open, the place of the locomotive is operating with advance the throttle to the desired running notch. Check the turbine speed indicator for the cab. Keep within the limits given on page 74. Turbine speed during dynamic braking are low, but remain constant at 5,900 RPMs above the fourth notch. After an emergency stopping, the turbine listed below is necessary to reset the stop valve with the cranking of the hand wheel to close position. See page 12 of the C operating 17. To stop the turbine, retard the throttle with the off position. Routine stopping. Close the stop valve of the main with the right hand wheel with the prolonged stop. If the emergency shutdown is required, push the manual with the trip mechanism of the ceiling of the cab. Automatic protective stoppage of the turbine will occur if there is low oil pressure, excessive speed, emergency brake application, or if the power knockout switch, ground relay, or rate of rise relays functions. All right, operation. Number 1, starting procedure cold boiler.